Your 401ks and budget strategy may have been influenced this morning. Why do I say that? Well, Larry Summers has withdrawn his name from consideration to be the next head of the Federal Reserve, and that may shape market reaction. Two big money issues: Summers' withdrawal and the 5-year anniversary of the financial collapse. What does it mean? Are we better off today? Let's discuss. Let's bring in CNN global economic analyst and Time Magazine's assistant managing editor, Rana Foroohar, and the host of Your Money, CNN business correspondent Christine Romans. Christine,
good morning.
Thank you to both of you, first of all. Let's start with Summers.
Sure.
What does it mean?
It means that Larry Summers will not be the next Federal Reserve chairman, and more likely that Janet Yellen will be. Look, he pulled out because he said to the president, this is looking too acrimonious. Me getting confirmed is going to be too tough, and that distracts from the work of the Federal Reserve. The most important work, by the way, in the world right now. The next Fed chief, probably the most important person in the world. They have to undo all of that stimulus and do it well without hurting the economy. Janet Yellen is likely seen as the front runner now. There are other names we're hearing, though. Stan Fisher, Don Cohn, Roger Ferguson, a lot of other names. What the White House chooses will be very interesting. Stocks are rallying this morning because they think if it's Janet Yellen, you're going to have consistency at the Fed, and that's what Wall Street wants to see, and that would be good for your money.
Now, Ron, I want to ask you about the 5-year anniversary that we are today of the financial collapse. I mean, there are a lot of opinions on are we better off today than we were 5 years ago. It's the subject of the Time Magazine cover, How Wall Street Won, you write. 5 years after the crash, it could happen all over again.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's safe to say that certain banks are in better shape than they were before the crisis. They're making record profits. They've increased the amount of capital they're holding, but the system as a whole...
That's not better for us, the consumer?
That's right, because the system as a whole still has not been re-regulated in a way that would make it safer next time around. Only 40% of the Dodd-Frank financial regulations have been written. There are important loopholes about banks still being able to trade derivatives, which were the very complex securities that caused the last crash. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done.
There was one big casino question that mattered in fixing the banks, which was how much leverage would they be allowed to have? How big a bet could they make without cash to back it up?
Right.
Has that changed, and should it change?
It's changed, but many say it hasn't changed enough.
That's right. I mean, the banks are still protesting using just 5% of their own money on risky deals. You know, most of the rest of America wouldn't dream of borrowing 50%,
right.
You know, let alone
They're not
95%.
allowed. They're not allowed by the same banks that trade like crazy.
They do have stress tests now, and the Treasury says, the Treasury actually disagrees with Ron and says that they are safer. No, they say that we are safer, and the banks are in better shape, and they're working hard to, finish up everything they have to do for regulation. But, they have to have stress tests. They have to have more capital on hand. But people don't feel safer. I mean, you look at the polling. People feel they're still worried about their job. Housing market's back. It's not all the way back. Jobs market's coming back. It's not all the way back. And the stock market, half of Americans aren't exposed to the stock market.
Well, that's the thing, and that's one of the points in my story, is that finance hasn't been re-moored in the real economy. Banks were set up to lend you and I money, to lend small businesses money. They're making most of their money doing risky trading, not lending to the real economy.
So we can look back and hopefully make some adjustments looking to the future.
I think so.
What is the biggest danger that's facing the U.S. economy right now?
Well, aside from the banking re-regulation that still needs to be done, I would say flat incomes. I mean, when was the last time most people got a raise in this country? In an economy, and I know Christina agrees with this, in an economy that's 70% consumer spending, you cannot have a robust recovery unless people start to see incomes ticking up.
And the fundamental tension that exists, unless you guys disagree, is that these banks that got the largest welfare program in the history of the world don't want to lend to people because they say, well, they're risky bets. And yet they were bailed out
by
the same people they won't lend to.
Let them, that they have to have a certain amount of cash in hand. Rana doesn't believe it.
Yeah, well, I just look at the balance sheet and I say you can make a lot more money trading than you can doing a 30-year mortgage.
But if the banks collapse, they said, we would all be worse off. So they said.
Well, we would be worse off if the banks collapse. They didn't collapse. We have to look forward.
Right.
We have
to
look forward.
That's right. We're still in a 2% economy. The banks have recovered, but we haven't.
It's a great article, Time Magazine. Worth a read.
We're definitely